everyone, welcome back to coffee number 5. And remember I told you about my first love was radio. I started doing radio when I was 14 and I fell in love. I fell in love with those voices of radio that you can imagine how they would look. And you had fantasies about them. And I fell in love with a lot of people through radio. And I had a lot of disappointments also when I met them. But anyway, I love the radio. And for me, doing a podcast was something that I had to learn again to do it because I was doing it in a different language. Mm-hmm. And you know what? So many people told me, don't do it. Nobody will listen to a podcast that with a woman with an accent. And I said, fuck it. And here we are. So today I invited someone that I feel like had a very similar situation in her life and with a lot of things. Cara Goldin, I'm so honored that you're here with me today. Thank you so much for coming to have coffee with me.
Absolutely. I'm excited that you asked me. So
so people told you no. I mean, let's tell people who you are. You are the founder of Hint, the drinks that they're fabulous and is what anyone needs really, because water gets tiring but flavor water never does. I love flavor water.
Absolutely. Well, and it's unsweetened, so it doesn't have a sweetener in it. And 17 years ago now, I was taking a little bit of a break. I had been a tech executive, had built a pretty significant business inside of America Online doing direct to consumer for 7 years. And I had started my family, had 3 kids at the time, was pregnant with my 4th when I launched Hint. But I started really looking at ingredients in first their food and really seeing that, there was just a lot of crap that was in everything from formula to, I couldn't really understand why I was giving my kids apple juice, when there was so much sugar. And I just thought, why isn't anyone questioning any of this? I mean, it's just
absolutely those juice boxes. I always feel like, and also with the metallic fold, you feel like
everything. I know. Yeah. And again,
feel right.
Coming from a different industry and being a consumer, I felt like I was seeing a lot of things that maybe other people weren't seeing. And so I finally one day looked down at my diet soda, my Diet Coke in particular, and I thought, I am not practicing what I'm preaching for myself. And here I'm telling my kids, don't do this, let's have no preservatives, all of these things. And then that was not how I was living. And so I decided that I needed to make a change. And I never even thought about myself as unhealthy, but I just, I wanted to be around for my family more than anything. And so I thought I'd do a test to see what would happen if I gave up my Diet Coke. And I have to tell you that it was not easy. I had been drinking Diet Coke since I was in high school. And so it was, my body went through a detox that no one.
I had the same thing. I had to give up. It was an addiction.
Yeah. And it was really, I equate it to being an athlete. Like I could do it, but it was hard. It was super, super hard. 2.5 weeks after giving up my Diet Coke, and I was drinking plain water in exchange for every time I thought about Diet Coke, I'd have a glass of water. And I kept thinking, this water is so boring. I don't know what I'm going to do. And 2.5 weeks later, all of a sudden it was like this cloud lifted. I had a problem with weight since having my kids. I had gained a bunch of weight. I was terrible at losing the weight, but never really viewed it as kind of a health issue. I just figured I was just gaining weight over the course of years, and that was just genetically what was going to happen. Then I also had developed terrible adult acne that I didn't even have as a teenager. Again, kept thinking that was about what I was putting on my skin. Never thought about maybe it's actually what I'm eating.
That is coming from the inside.
Yeah, it just didn't. And again, I'm a very smart person who's built businesses. I've done other things. I just hadn't thought about it and hadn't focused on it. All of a sudden, my skin's clear. I lost 24 pounds in 2.5 weeks. I mean, it was crazy. And suddenly I'm like, wait, what? How could this be? The scale is broken. I mean, like, I don't know what happened to my skin. And then I started to connect the dots. I thought the only significant change that I made was actually shifting the Diet Coke. And I thought, how could this be? And then I started looking around at all of the products on the shelves inside of stores and how I suddenly saw so clearly that there was healthy perception versus healthy reality, and that there were a lot of people who were drinking Diet Coke like me, who I believe thought that they were doing better. That and there was also this other product that was the hottest thing that had just hit the shelves called vitamin water. And when I looked at the label on vitamin water, they didn't even have a diet version of vitamin water. But I would ask some of my friends why they drink vitamin water, besides the fact that it tasted good to them. And they would say, because it says vitamin and water.
I was about to say the aftertaste of the drinks. That drove me crazy.
Yeah, well, but even before you even got to taste it, there's a marketing machine that goes on that convinces you. And you know, definitely, I can't speak for the vitamin water team, but you know, diet soda in particular, they put a lot of emphasis on targeting high school girls. Why? Because they know that soda is bad for them, right? They have parents who are saying it's bad for you, it's not good, blah, 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 blah. But then the word diet allows them to continue. Yep. And so you get hooked on it. And then maybe you're, you know, concerned about how you look, how you know, how much you weigh, whatever those issues are. They know that that high school girl, that's how they're thinking about things. Right or wrong, that's what's happening. So they get you. And that was my story. So I started really thinking about all of this and excited that I got healthy. Of course, I wasn't going to go back to drinking diet soda. My kids were starting to grow up, all of these things. And I thought, while I'm trying to figure out what I really want to do for a career, I thought when I left America Online, I was traveling like crazy. The company was actually based in Virginia. I lived in San Francisco. And I thought, I'm going to find another tech job, but it's going to be in the Bay Area. And when I started looking around at the different opportunities, I kept coming back to what I was really thinking about, what I was really, you know, curious about. And that was this industry. And I saw this hole so clearly and this problem that I believed that if I could fix this problem, then I could actually help a lot of people get healthy, stay healthy, who aren't thinking about this at all. So that was my mission from the beginning. I mean, it's interesting. I've been interviewed for this over the years, and I never thought about starting a beverage company. I've met a lot of people who, you know the backstory to vitamin water or Red Bull or whatever it is, and they want to go start a beverage company too. That was not me. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. It wasn't me. For me, it was about helping people realize what I had seen. And if I could help people actually live a life of getting healthy, that would feel really good to me. Selfishly, that's why I wanted to really go and do what I wanted to do.
That's beautiful. That's honest. That's really beautiful that you have such a strong core beliefs that's why you started the company. And I feel like it's so important for every company to have strong beliefs and their core values. Otherwise, you cannot create a company from scratch. I see all these entrepreneurs now, because after COVID or during COVID, everyone thought, oh, maybe I can be an entrepreneur at some point. And starting with for the wrong reasoning, a company, or trying to be one more of the people that are doing the same is not enough. You need to find that market that needs something, find and resolve a problem.
Totally. And I think to your point about everybody was telling me no, I mean, something I think a lot about, and I try and share this with my audience and also with other entrepreneurs, is we spend the most amount of time talking to ourselves every single day, right? And the people that also we respect our family, our friends, colleagues. We're excited about our idea, but when you are actually coming from a different industry, when you don't have the right experience, when you have 3 kids under the age of 5 and 1 on the way, there are a million people who are showing up to tell you you can't.
And the opinions, oh my God, everyone has their opinion, how you need to raise your kids, what you need to do during pregnancy.
Right. And it's hard because at some level, you think inside your head, I probably shouldn't do this. I don't have the experience. I have too many kids to start this. They're too young, whatever it is. So it's hard, right? And so that's one of the things that I talk about in my book, that the book is called Undaunted: Overcoming Doubts.
Oh yeah, I have it here, of course. Yep, there you go.
And it's because I really wanted to share with people over the years that it's not all about, snapping your fingers and going and creating a company. I think that there are so few people that actually find success that will say that it was a straight line, right? There's a zigzag that goes on. Yeah. There's stuff that they regret. There are failures. There are challenges along the way. There's stuff that they thought was going to be huge and then it wasn't. And your ability to actually, I felt like my ability to talk about those things and think about those things, I started journaling. And so this book was a journal, and it was about 600 pages. And I would do a lot of talks and get interviewed by different publications. And then I would get off of the interview and I would start talking about it. And I would almost prompt myself from their questions to say, how else would I can't answer it the same way. How else would I talk about it? And I found myself thinking about stories that I had along the way. My husband, who's been the chief operating officer, has said we would have made a lot more money if we would have just run the video cameras over the years. So many stories, right? That were just
I'm sure. But I mean, a lot of people feel like success is easy to be successful. And no, success comes with a price. With a total price. I mean, I feel like even over the years, and this I'm sure happened to you as a mother too, like a lot of people that we meet in the way is circumstantial because they're friends of the kids. You form new relationships that they are, but then when you become this businesswoman and you become this person that you are thinking about your business, you have a team, you have responsibilities, which is not only paying your team, is mentoring your team, growing your team, creating this work culture. There is so many things that you have to do. Your views change and you don't have the time to do other things. So you sacrifice things in your life too.
But I will also say one of the chapters in the book where I talk about this, that was, a real aha moment for me, that I was never, I was, I guess, a member of the PTA. I was the person that was, really trying to hold it together most of the time, especially while my kids were in school and they were younger. When my son was 12 years old, one day we were sitting in the kitchen, and he's my 3rd child, and he plays a ton of tennis, which we'll get to in a minute, but he was watching Sheryl Sandberg on television talking about leaning in. And it was kind of in the background for me. And Sheryl said, there is such a small percentage of women who are CEOs of companies, and, talking about why she felt that way, why it was the way that it was. And my son, my 12-year-old, said, Mom, I didn't realize that there aren't very many of you, that I've been watching you run a company my whole life. And so I'm thinking, where is he going with this, right? Like this, now I have to talk to him about like women being CEOs, et cetera. And he said, I think you've done a great job. So why aren't there more female CEOs? And I thought, what a nice thing to say. I thought we were done with that conversation. The next day, he came home from tennis and he said, Mom, why are there girls' teams and boys' teams on the tennis team? And I said, here's a few different reasons that I can think of it. He said, but the girls, there are many girls that are better than the boys. And I would rather have them. Why can't we have a co-ed team? And he said, I'm going to go and talk to the head of the tennis group that he's a part of and see if we can't make that happen. So I thought at this moment, first of all, he has respect for women. He sees women differently, but then he also has that entrepreneurial spirit in him that says, I can, right? That there are things that are in place that may not be right with the times.
Yeah.
Maybe they are.
You can make a change, and you can even think about the change. Maybe things around you, they are not set for that change immediately, but
Right.
you can start the conversation.
So by doing what I did every single day as a parent, he was living his life. I was living my life, being his mom, trying to do what I was doing. But I also saw, or he also saw, how passionate about what I was doing. And there were times when he was in carpools where people would say, where's your mom? And he said, oh, she's fighting big soda. She's off, like, he would have these like stock answers to do. And in his mind, that was really what I was doing. So while I had beaten myself up for so many years, while I had felt like there's trade-offs,
Yep.
what I realized later on in life, and he's now 19 years old, is that the way he lives life is significantly different than maybe other people live their life. But he also saw a role model that was strong. He saw his dad working with me over the years as well, which is just unique. He never thought of it as any, different, but he also saw it as a way to really understand how do you disrupt, how do you create change, and I think the great thing about Gen Z that I've shared with so many people is that they really want the backstories. They want to understand the whys of companies, good and bad. They won't buy from companies that don't have,
those core values. See, I have a 17 and a 15 also,
Totally.
and I see it all the time that they really want to know more about those core beliefs. They are not necessarily into organic or not organic. They believe more in what their why they do what they do.
Totally. And it can backfire. I mean, we've seen it over the years with WeWork and, with Theranos, with some of it, they know those stories and they carry those stories. So I think being able to be a child of something, and while I had beaten myself up for so many years, I was thankful that I actually had that moment where I thought, we're teaching just by living, just by doing. And
that's part of being a leader. I mean, you're a leader of your family and you're leading by example. And it's someone that you're mentoring and they're growing up to see what they can be and the possibilities. And I have big issues with education. I feel like they are taught to work in a cubicle without a window, that those are the expectations. And I taught my kids to think outside the box, and they got in a lot of trouble for that. But I believe that it's going to pay off because they are looking beyond that cubicle.
It's really, really smart. And again, like sometimes, like so many other things in life, when you have fears, when you have doubts about what you're doing, or, as Steve Jobs used to say, eventually the dots connect. I think for me, the most important thing is that I was doing something that I loved doing while I was raising my children. And how many people maybe are, not working, for example, and they're not enjoying that, right? They regret it. They're around their children, they see that, right? Or they're working in a job that they don't like, right? But they feel like it's stable. They feel like whatever that is. I think everybody's got to make their own decisions. But I think that even though starting a company, starting an entirely new industry or category in an industry, all of those things, there were a lot of lessons that he learned that he wouldn't have learned in school.
Absolutely. Starting a company is hard. And in your case, you had something unique, different, And as you told in some of your stories, you went to mentors or people that they were in the industry already, that you go through connections and you ask them for advice. And you got that no, or don't try it, don't do it. And how do you deal with that? Because it's hard. It's hard to say no, but I do it anyway.
Yeah, I think going back to being an athlete, I think I was a competitive gymnast growing up, and I think back on that experience of working on a team. I never wanted to be on a team where I was the best one, right? Because I felt like if I was the best one, that first of all, there was a lot of pressure. And then also I wouldn't be learning. And I was very proud of having people who were better than me so that I could actually admire and
look up
and be able, and that is a really tough concept for a lot of people to understand. But I think when you are okay with feedback, right? I would go to the coaches, say, why aren't you putting me in, or whatever it was. They'd say, well, you still have to get to this point. And I'd say, okay. So for me, no's were always, I'll get there. It's never going to be no. It's going to be, here are the reasons. And I think in many ways that also helped me when I was producing this product, because I kept hearing from people that you can't produce a product using real fruit that doesn't have preservatives in it. And I'd say, why? And they'd say, well, we don't know. And they'd say, what industry were you in before? And I'd say, I was in tech. You shouldn't even be producing a product. You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm like, you're probably right. But why is it that you have to use preservatives in the product? And I was amazed at how many people who were producing millions of bottles or cans every single year did not know the reason.
That's surprising. That's what, like, I mean, what I feel is like, why? I mean, those people are working in those industries and they don't know the reason. That's something that worries me, that we're not going to the most elemental factors, water and fruit. And
I grew up in a house, in addition to having coaches, where I was allowed to say why.
Yeah.
Right. And I might not like the answer. It wasn't immediate gratification in many, many cases, but I was allowed to say why. And sometimes it would make my dad crazy, because I'd say, I want to go to a party on Friday night. And he'd say, nope. And I'd say, why? And he'd say, because your brother's gotten a lot of trouble. I'm not my brother, but okay, but keep going. And have these dialogues. And, sometimes I would win and sometimes I wouldn't. But for being able to ask why, I think oftentimes people stop and they won't, especially as you get older, especially as you have more experience, because you feel like it's showing you're vulnerable, right? Mm-hmm. You're showing, and especially women don't want to be generally the stupidest person in the room, right? They feel like just by not having knowledge, they're not going to, and this holds true for men as well. But I think for me, I felt like if I could ask why, and somebody has a dialogue with me, I might not like their answer, but still, maybe just by talking through things, then I'll find the answer.
I always feel like I never know everything, and I just want to know more. I feel like never is enough. I'm a constant learner. So I just always want to ask questions. My husband tells me I'm too noisy, because when I meet something, what do you do? And what do you do? And how do you do it? And
you're curious, and that's a good thing. And I think that people, I hope they remain curious.
And what I found out is that people love to talk about themselves and what they do. Mm-hmm. And by explaining themselves and what they do, also discover a part of them that many times they don't talk about themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And understanding their why and understanding all of those things. I think that the more that they start to go back through that story too, is they understand things about themselves that they didn't even really realize like how they got there. And so I absolutely agree.
So what was your moment, the moment that you realized, oh my God, this is really happening? I got the formula. I got a way to do this water with flavor, no preservatives, and I have to get a bottle. I mean, how many things you had to put together? And did you know ahead of time that you will need to do all this? Did you have a plan, or were you going, okay, and now I do this?
No, and in fact, I often say, like, sometimes if you think too much about the end, you'll never get past the beginning. I had no idea what I was doing. And I think having been successful in another industry helped me to know that if I failed, if this wasn't going to work out, I could go back to tech. I mean, I didn't tell a lot of my friends. Most of my friends that were, not in sort of the moms of my kids from preschool were in tech. And so I wasn't going to tell them that I'm starting a beverage company. I mean, it wasn't even a company to me. I just thought it was a lot of fun for me to go and get a product on the shelf at Whole Foods. I had no idea how to distribute the product. I didn't even know how to make the product. I was willing to invest money. I took $50,000 out of my bank account. And that's when I decided I should really tell my husband. We live in California. It's community property. Like, I think I should probably tell him that I'm doing this. And, he didn't argue with me about taking money out of our bank account because I had made some money. But he didn't think it was a great idea. He was like, I think you could.
And what does he think now?
Well, it's interesting because, he's been the chief operating officer for the last 16 and a half years. He was an intellectual property attorney in Silicon Valley, and he left. He was at Netscape and then actually went to a little startup that he was recruited out of by a friend of his father, who's a doctor, who was doing something in healthcare. And he was really passionate about healthcare. He felt like the world should have access to basic healthcare, and it shouldn't be based on where you live or how much you could afford or anyway. And so suddenly I come along, he's seen the changes that I've made in myself just by paying attention to ingredients. And when I came along and said, okay, I'm going to start a beverage company, and I think I can get it into Whole Foods. I don't know for sure, but I think I can. I've been talking to the guy there. And he said, what's the name of this company? And I said, it's called Wawa. And he said, no, don't call it Wawa. Here I had been, a mom, like a little kid, telling my kids drink Wawa, and he said, just don't call it Wawa. Also, because he grew up in New York City, where actually in Pennsylvania, there's a chain of stores called Wawa. And again, the lawyer in him was like, if you ever get traction with this company, they'll sue you. You can't get that trademark for it. So he wasn't my favorite person at the moment, because I thought I had, this rock star name. And then I said, he said, just keep thinking of other names and run them by me. And I finally said, hint. Like, we're giving people hints. It's a hint of flavor, all this stuff. And he said, it's a 4-letter word. You'll never get it trademarked. And that was the moment when I said, well, I have something else to tell you. And he said, what? And I said, I'm pregnant with our 4th. And this was all in the same conversation. He said, you're starting a company in a new industry. And I said, yeah. And I took $50,000 out of our bank account, and I'm meeting with a bottler in Chicago. He's like, oh my gosh, like on so many levels. And he said, can I at least come with you to the factory? And I said, yeah, but you need to try and trademark the name Hint. And he said, I will try, but it is never going to happen. P.S. We have global trademark rights on Hint. So don't always listen to your lawyer.
Or your husband.
Or your husband. So when we went to the bottler in Chicago, when he saw the bottles coming off the line, we were doing this test run. He said, I get it now. Like, you've been working in bits and bytes. Now you've got a physical product. That's what's really exciting. And I said, that's not what's exciting at all. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, what I'm trying to do is actually offer people an affordable way to get healthy, because I realized that it wasn't that maybe some things that I thought were actually healthier and better for me under the word diet were actually doing more harm than good. And if we can actually get people to enjoy a great tasting product, they will then achieve health. I believed it. And if we can do that throughout the world, selfishly, like that's my legacy. And he looked at me and he said, I'm in. Like, you've sold me. I get it.
Why? Your why. That's
Yeah.
your why. And that's why you get your audience to believe in you, because you have a very strong story and a very strong why behind your brand.
Thank you. Well, and it was at that moment that he said, I'll help you. And I said, what would you do? You're a lawyer. Like, you can't help me. And he said, just let me help you deliver cases. You're pregnant. Like, I mean, how are you going to do that? And he did. I mean, and then, you know, as we started getting busier, he stayed. And he, you know, has just been phenomenal at making, you know, really running supply chain and operations and doing everything, you know, to get our company to where it is today. So
that's an incredible story. Cara, thank you so much. I'm so grateful and for you being here and sharing coffee with me and this time, and your story is really an inspiration for all my audience. So
thank you so much. Thank you.
And to you guys, I will see you next week with more coffee number 5.